CEO blind date was canceled. A little girl walked in and said, "Don't. I am here for my mommy." Rain hits the windows. The restaurant hums with quiet chatter and clinking glasses. Desmond Cole checks his watch again. His date just canceled. He's done waiting. He grabs his jacket, ready to leave, when a small voice stops him. "Don't," the girl says, holding a teddy bear almost her size. "I'm here for my mommy." He stares, confused, speechless. The waiter freezes. The hostess looks lost. The girl points to the empty chair across from him. "That's for her, right?" Desmond's heart beats faster. He's never seen this child before. The reservation is under his name. So how does she know who he is? Please help hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The waiter freezes, unsure what to do. Desmond stays seated, trying to process the tiny stranger standing beside his table. The girl grips her teddy bear like it's a shield. "Mommy said to tell you she's coming," she says again, more certain this time. Every eye in the restaurant turns toward them. Desmond's throat tightens. He's a man who controls boardrooms, not children. He leans forward, trying to keep his voice steady. "And who's your mommy?" Before the girl can answer, the doors open fast. Heels clicking, breath short, eyes searching. "Celeste!" A woman rushes over, apologizing before she even reaches them. She's out of breath, her coat half-buttoned, rain caught in her hair. "I'm so sorry," she says. "I'm Sabrina. We were supposed to meet. The app must have canceled me." Desmond studies her. She doesn't look like anyone from his world. No designer dress, no polished pretense. Just a plain blouse, dark jeans, and eyes that hold exhaustion and warmth at the same time. "You're the one who was late?" he asks quietly. She nods, brushing a curl from Celeste's forehead. An older man collapsed outside the station. "I couldn't just leave him." Desmond blinks, unsure how to respond. He had expected excuses. Traffic, weather, anything but this. "You helped him?" he asks. "Of course," she says simply. "He was alone." Celeste tugs at her sleeve. "Mommy, can we sit now?" Sabrina glances at Desmond, embarrassed. "If you still want to. I understand if you'd rather." Desmond cuts her off. "Sit." It comes out sharper than he means. She hesitates, then pulls out the chair. Dinner begins stiffly. Sabrina apologizes again. Celeste hums to herself, doodling on the napkin with a pen she found in her mother's bag. The restaurant's soft chatter hums around them, but at the table, silence grows thick. Desmond tries small talk, but his voice feels mechanical. "You're a teacher?" She nods. "Art. Elementary school." "That's creative," he says, unsure how to continue. Sabrina smiles politely. "That's one word for it." Celeste interrupts, holding up her drawing. "This is you," she says, pointing to a stick figure in a suit. "You look mad." Desmond's eyebrows lift. "Do I?" "A little," Celeste says, matter of fact. Sabrina hides a laugh behind her hand. For the first time that night, Desmond smiles. Small, but real. "Well, maybe I need to work on that," he says. "Maybe," Celeste says, and goes back to drawing. The tension softens. Sabrina tells him about her classroom, the chaos of paint and glue sticks, the way children see color without rules. She speaks with quiet pride, and it disarms him. Desmond finds himself listening more than speaking, something rare for him. She asks about his work. He gives the usual answer: tech investments, board meetings, deadlines. But she asks a question that catches him off guard. Do you like it? He hesitates. It keeps me busy. That's not what I asked, she says gently. For a moment, he doesn't know what to say. Celeste slides him another napkin, this one with a crooked heart in the middle. You can keep it, she says. When the waiter returns, Sabrina orders pasta and water. Desmond orders wine, but when he sees her decline, he changes his order to the same. Halfway through the meal, Celeste asks, do rich people eat noodles too? Sabrina gasps. Celeste. Desmond laughs. A genuine laugh that makes heads turn. Only on special occasions, he says. As dinner ends, the air feels lighter. Desmond offers to pay, but Sabrina insists on covering the tip. Please, she says when he protests, let me at least do something. She folds a few bills neatly beside the check. He notices her hands, calloused, steady, the kind of hands that have worked for everything they've held. Outside, rain still falls. Desmond gestures toward his black car parked by the entrance. I'll drive you home. Sabrina shakes her head. We're fine. The bus is only a block away. Celeste jumps in a puddle and laughs. Mommy says the bus talks when you press the button. Desmond looks at them, two people content with rain and noise, while his world runs on silence and order. You sure? He asks one last time. Sabrina nods. We'll be okay. They start walking toward the corner. Celeste waves. Bye, Mr. Des. He waves back, the name echoing in his head long after they disappear around the bend. He turns toward his car but doesn't move. For the first time in years, time doesn't feel wasted. It feels like something he wants more of. Desmond didn't plan to see her again. He told himself dinner was an accident, a moment of curiosity that didn't need repeating. But 2 days later, he found himself scrolling back through her messages, reading the short one she'd sent after the meal. Thank you for not leaving. He didn't reply, but he thought about it too often. The following weekend, he finally texted her first. Hope the man at the station's okay. She responded a minute later. He's recovering. We're at the art fair if you ever want to see real color. He read the message twice. Real color. His life was grayscale. Clean offices, chrome cars, glass walls. Still, against every logical thought, he drove there. The art fair was crowded, messy, alive. Tents lined the street, paintbrushes clattered in jars, and the air smelled like coffee and rain. He found Sabrina easily, hair tied up, sleeves rolled, jeans speckled with dried paint. Celeste sat beside her at a small table covered in finger-painted suns. She waved when she spotted him. Mr. Des. We made art. He smiled despite himself. Sabrina looked up, surprise flickering across her face before softening into a smile. You came. He shrugged. You said there'd be color. She handed him a small canvas covered in streaks of yellow and blue. Celeste calls this one happy sky, she said. Celeste giggled. It's messy, like Mommy's cooking. Sabrina laughed. Ignore her. Desmond watched them, realizing how little laughter he heard in his own world. No one in his office ever laughed like that. Full, unfiltered, real. The afternoon passed quickly. He helped Celeste stack her art while Sabrina sold small prints to passers-by. Every person she spoke to left smiling, even when they didn't buy anything. She treated everyone the same, whether they were buying a $5 postcard or just browsing. Desmond couldn't remember the last time someone looked at him the way she looked at strangers. Present, kind, with no agenda. As the fair wound down, Sabrina turned to him. "I didn't expect you to show up." He nodded. "Neither did I." She tilted her head. "You don't strike me as the spontaneous type." "I'm not," he admitted. "But maybe that's the problem." That night, he couldn't stop thinking about the paint under her nails or the way she laughed when Celeste accidentally smeared color on her cheek. His world suddenly felt too quiet. Days turned into weeks. The text messages became routine, short but steady. "How's Celeste?" "Exhausted from school. She says hi." "You working late again?" "Always." Then one Friday evening, Sabrina called unexpectedly. "You said you've never had dinner that wasn't on a schedule. Come over." No plans, no reservations. He hesitated. "What's on the menu?" "Whatever's in my fridge," she said. "If that scares you, bring backup noodles." He went. Her apartment was small. Books stacked in corners, artwork taped to the walls, a faint smell of paint and soap. Celeste greeted him in pajamas, her hair in wild curls. "Mr. Des, we're making spaghetti. Want to stir?" He looked down at her and smiled. "I'll try not to burn it." Dinner was simple. Noodles, canned sauce, laughter. Sabrina sat cross-legged on a chair, telling stories about her students. Desmond found himself talking about his own childhood, something he rarely mentioned. "My mother was a nurse," he said quietly. "She worked nights. I used to wait for her by the door, just to hear her keys." Sabrina listened. No judgment, no pity. Just quiet understanding. After dinner, they played cards with Celeste, who cheated openly and declared herself the winner. When it was time to leave, Desmond lingered at the door. "You're different," he said softly. Sabrina smiled. "So are you. You just hide it better." He drove home in silence, the city lights blurring outside his window. For the first time in years, his penthouse felt too large, too cold. Over the next month, their connection grew. They met at the park, at the grocery store, at Sabrina's classroom where Celeste sometimes sat painting beside her mother's desk. Desmond started showing up with small things: lunch for Sabrina, new brushes for Celeste. She always protested. "You don't have to bring anything." "I know," he said, "but I want to." The line between friendship and something deeper blurred without either of them naming it. One afternoon, as they walked through the park, Celeste held both their hands and said proudly, "We look like a family." Sabrina froze, but Desmond didn't let go. "We kind of do," he said quietly. That night, Desmond stayed awake thinking about those words. "We look like a family." He didn't know if it scared him or steadied him. Then came the crack. He was in his office when his assistant reminded him about the upcoming profile interview. A televised special about his rise as a self-made millionaire. "They want to highlight your image as a driven, single visionary," she said. "Keep it clean and professional." He nodded distractedly, but later that evening, when he mentioned it to Sabrina, she went silent. Then she laughed lightly, but her eyes didn't match the sound. "Don't worry, I'll stay invisible." Desmond frowned. "That's not what I meant." "I know," she said quickly. "You have an image to keep. I get it." He tried to explain that the interview had been scheduled months before they met, but the air had shifted. Sabrina smiled, but the warmth was gone. Later, as he drove home, her words echoed. Stay invisible. He thought about all the times people had done exactly that for him, adjusted themselves to fit his world. But for the first time, he didn't want her to. He wanted her to take up space, to challenge him, to remind him what mattered. The next day, he sent flowers, something simple, white tulips. She texted a polite thank you, but her message felt distant. That weekend, he called. Can I see you? Sabrina hesitated. Celeste has a school art show tomorrow. It's small, but you can come if you want. He went. The classroom was noisy and bright. Children ran around showing off drawings of animals and stick figures. Celeste's piece was taped near the window, a drawing of 3 people holding hands under a sun. When she saw Desmond, she pointed excitedly. That's you. Sabrina's cheeks flushed, but she smiled. She insisted on adding you. Desmond stared at the drawing. 3 figures, smiling. His chest tightened, not from pride, but fear. He'd spent his whole life building walls, and now a child's crayon drawing had just drawn him inside a home he didn't know he wanted. After the event, Sabrina walked him to the car. You didn't have to come, she said softly. I wanted to, he replied. She looked at him for a long second. Desmond, you live in a world where everything is managed. But some things can't be managed. You know that, right? He nodded, unsure what she meant, or maybe he did, but didn't want to face it. That night, he sat in his car outside his building for nearly 20 minutes before going in. His reflection stared back at him in the elevator mirror. The perfect suit, the perfect tie, the perfect mask. For the first time, he hated all of it. He thought of Sabrina's laughter, Celeste's chalk-stained hands, the smell of cheap spaghetti sauce, and the sound of genuine joy. He realized he was terrified, not of losing money or reputation, but of losing the feeling that came with them. For a man who'd spent his life defining worth in numbers, he was finally facing something he couldn't measure. Sabrina woke to the sharp buzz of her phone before sunrise. At first, she ignored it, thinking it was just another early school notification. But the vibration wouldn't stop. Her screen lit up again and again. Messages, missed calls, tags. Her friend Tasha's name appeared at the top. Girl, you need to see this. Still half asleep, Sabrina opened the link. Then her stomach dropped. Across the homepage of a gossip site was a photo she didn't remember being taken. Her and Desmond at the small bookstore near her apartment, Celeste on his shoulders, both of them laughing. The headline screamed, Tech Tycoon's Secret Romance with Single Mom, Love or Charity. She scrolled, her heart racing. Comment after comment poured in. Some praised Desmond for being down to earth. Others tore her apart. She's lucky. He's doing community service. Typical gold digger move. Sabrina's chest ached. Her face burned. By the time she reached the bottom of the page, tears blurred the words. Her phone buzzed again, now from work. A text from her school principal. We need to talk before class today. She didn't respond. In the kitchen, Celeste sat at the table eating cereal, swinging her legs. Mommy, why are you sad? She asked, milk on her chin. Sabrina wiped her face quickly. I'm not, baby. Just tired. But she wasn't tired. She was humiliated. By noon, everyone seemed to know. At the art supply store, people whispered near the aisle. At school, a coworker smiled too brightly and said, I saw the article. That's something. Even the parents at pickup stared. One murmured, "Must be nice to have friends in high places." Sabrina left early, keeping her head down. That night, she sat on her couch, staring at her phone as it rang again and again. Desmond. His name flashed across the screen. She couldn't answer. Not yet. When the doorbell finally rang, she knew it was him. She didn't open the door at first. She stood behind it, breathing hard. Then his voice came, steady but low. "Sabrina," it was. "Timmy." She opened the door halfway. Desmond stood there in a dark coat, phone still in hand, his hair damp from the drizzle outside. "I didn't leak anything," he said quickly. "Someone must have." "I don't care who did," she cut in. "It happened. That's all that matters." He tried to step inside, but she didn't move. "Sabrina, listen. I'm handling it. I can." "Stop." Her voice shook, not from anger, but from something deeper. "You can't handle this like a business deal. You can't make it disappear. I can issue a statement." "No," she said sharply. "You don't get it. I didn't want this. I didn't want to be news. I didn't want to be a project." Desmond flinched. "A project? That's what they're calling me," she said, her voice breaking. "Your project. The single mom you're helping. The poor woman who caught your attention. Do you know how that feels?" "I never said." "You don't have to. You live in a world that makes people like me look like charity cases just for existing near you." Silence. Desmond's jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. He wanted to explain, to tell her how furious he was about the article, how betrayed he felt too. But she wasn't looking for excuses. "Maybe they're right," she said quietly, arms folded over her chest. "Maybe I am just your good deed for the year." "That's not true," he said quickly. "Then why didn't you fight for me before this?" she asked. "Why didn't you ever let people see who I am to you? You hide me in your quiet corners, your private restaurants, your side entrances. And now the world gets to decide for me." He swallowed hard, guilt clawing at his throat. "I was trying to protect you." "From what?" "From being real." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The rain outside grew heavier, tapping against the railing. Sabrina finally stepped back. "You should go." Desmond stared at her, searching for something to say, anything that wouldn't sound like another calculated line. Nothing came. Celeste's small voice broke the silence. "Mommy, is he not coming in?" Sabrina turned, forcing a soft smile. "No, baby. Mr. Des has to go home." Celeste frowned. "Did he do something bad?" Sabrina shook her head. "No, sweetheart. He just forgot who we are." Desmond's breath hitched. He wanted to speak, to say I didn't forget, but the words stayed locked inside. Instead, he nodded slowly. "Good night, Celeste." She waved from the hallway, confused but trusting. Sabrina closed the door. The sound of it clicked softly, but it felt final. Outside, Desmond stayed on the porch for a long time. The rain soaked through his coat, his shoes, his composure. The man who could solve billion-dollar crises couldn't fix this. Not with logic, not with power, not with money. He walked back to his car, each step heavy. His phone buzzed in his pocket, reporters asking for comment, his assistant forwarding links, his PR team demanding a response. He turned it off. For the first time in years, he had no strategy. Back inside the apartment, Sabrina sat beside Celeste on the couch. The little girl leaned against her shoulder, holding the same teddy bear she had brought to the restaurant that first night. "Mommy," she said sleepily, "why do people say mean things?" Sabrina brushed a curl from her forehead. "Because sometimes they don't understand what's real." Celeste thought about it for a moment. "You and Mr. Des are real." Sabrina smiled sadly. "Maybe that's the problem." She tucked her daughter into bed, but even after Celeste's breathing slowed, she stayed awake. Every sound from outside, a car passing, the echo of thunder, felt like a reminder that the world was still talking about her, turning her life into something to debate. At dawn, she stood by the window and watched the street below. 2 delivery workers unloaded crates. A bus hissed to a stop. The city kept moving, indifferent. Her phone lit up again, this time with a message from Desmond. Just one line. "Please, don't let this be the last word between us." She didn't answer. Across town, Desmond sat in his darkened office, tie undone, coffee untouched. His publicist was leaving frantic voicemails, but he ignored them all. His reflection stared back at him from the window, a man with everything except peace. He replayed her words in his head. "You hide me. You make me invisible." She was right. Every decision he'd made since meeting her had been cautious. Dinners at private places, car rides after dark, keeping her out of frame when cameras were near. He'd told himself it was to protect her, but it was really to protect himself. For the first time, he saw the truth. He'd built walls so high that even love couldn't get through. When the sun finally rose, Desmond turned off his phone completely. He didn't want to read another headline, didn't want to see her name in anyone else's words. He needed to see her face, not the story they'd written about her. But when he grabbed his keys and looked outside, the rain started again, relentless, steady, washing the city clean. He didn't go. Not yet. Because this time, he didn't want to show up as the man who fixed things. He wanted to learn how to stay when he couldn't. And for a man like Desmond Cole, that was the hardest thing in the world. 3 days passed in complete silence. No calls, no texts, no messages that began with "hey" or ended with "soon." For Desmond, time usually meant progress, meetings, targets, results. But these 3 days stretched longer than any quarter he'd ever lived through. His house felt enormous, every surface too polished, every sound too distant. The refrigerator hummed like background noise in an empty hotel. He tried to focus on work, but every chart blurred into white noise. At night, he found himself replaying an old video on his phone, one Celeste had recorded weeks ago. She was laughing, showing him how to paint with her fingers, saying, "Don't be scared to mess it up, Mr. Des. It's just color." When the clip ended, he stared at the dark screen until his vision burned. He had never cried as an adult. Not when his company almost collapsed. Not when his father died. But now, sitting alone in a kitchen that smelled faintly of cold coffee and regret, he let it happen. Across the city, Sabrina moved through her days like someone trying to remember how. She went to work, smiled when needed, taught her art classes as if nothing had changed. But at night, when Celeste was asleep, the silence pressed on her chest. She told herself she had done the right thing, that walking away had protected her dignity. But then she'd remember his voice, quiet and uneven at her door. "It wasn't me." And it would all start again. The doubt, the ache, the wondering. Celeste didn't make it easier. Every morning came with the same question. "Mommy, when is Mr. Des coming back?" Sabrina always said the same thing. "He's busy, baby. Big people have work." Celeste would nod, But after she left for school, Sabrina would sit at the table and stare at the empty chair across from hers, the one he used to sit in when they'd eat dinner together. The chair hadn't moved, but the air around it felt colder now. That Friday night, she cleaned the apartment just to keep her hands busy. She dusted shelves that didn't need dusting and rearranged books that were already straight. When she reached the small box where she kept old letters and keepsakes, she found it, folded neatly beneath a receipt from months ago. The handkerchief. It was the same one he had handed her that first night, after Celeste spilled water on her dress. White cotton, faintly creased, still carrying the faint trace of his cologne, a mix of cedar and something clean. She held it to her face and closed her eyes. "I wish you'd fought for us," she whispered. The words hung in the air, soft but sharp. She sat there for a while, the apartment dim except for the glow from the streetlights. She thought about calling him, about saying just one thing, anything that might undo what had happened. But pride stopped her. So did fear. At the same time, across town, Desmond sat in his car outside her building. He'd driven there twice already that week and turned back both times. Tonight he parked under the same flickering streetlight, hands gripping the steering wheel. He didn't know what he would say if she opened the door. He only knew he couldn't stand another night pretending he didn't care. He looked down at the passenger seat. A small paper bag sat there. Nothing expensive. Just groceries, popcorn, and a pack of ramen noodles. He had stood in the grocery aisle for almost 20 minutes, not knowing what someone like her would actually want from him, and finally decided to bring what she'd once laughed about: real dinner, not CEO food. He stared at her window. A light was still on. Inside, Sabrina picked up her phone again. She opened her messages, scrolled to his name, typed "Are you okay?" then deleted it before sending. She dropped the phone onto the couch and leaned back, eyes closed. Then came the knock. It wasn't loud, just a steady, deliberate rhythm. One she knew too well. Her heart stopped for a second. She waited, hoping maybe she imagined it. Then it came again. Celeste stirred in the bedroom, half awake. "Mommy, someone's here." Sabrina stood, her legs weak. The walk to the door felt longer than it should. She hesitated, hand hovering over the handle. Another knock. She opened it slowly. Desmond stood there, soaked from the drizzle, holding 2 grocery bags like a man unsure if he had any right to be there. He looked nothing like the man she remembered from the articles. No suit, no calm confidence, just exhaustion in his eyes. Sabrina's mouth parted, but no words came. He lifted one bag slightly. Ramen noodles, popcorn, and chocolate. Celeste's favorites. She stared, speechless. He took a slow breath. "I'm not here as a CEO. I'm not here with statements or excuses. I just..." He looked down for a moment, then met her eyes. "I just miss your world." The one that made sense. For a long time, neither moved. The rain behind him blurred the sound of the city. Inside, Celeste's small voice called out again. "Mommy, who is it?" Sabrina's eyes softened. "It's Mr. Des, baby." Celeste appeared at the hallway, barefoot, clutching her teddy bear. When she saw him, her face lit up. "You came back," she said, running to him. He bent down, setting the bags aside just in time to catch her as she hugged his neck. She smelled like soap and sleep. From her small hand, she pulled out something folded. "This is yours," she said seriously. "Mommy washed it." Desmond unfolded the handkerchief, the same one he'd given Sabrina months ago. It was soft now, edges frayed, still warm from her touch. He looked at Sabrina. Her eyes glistened. He swallowed hard. "Thank you," he whispered to Celeste. Then, looking back at Sabrina, "Can I come in?" She hesitated only a second, then stepped aside. He entered quietly, setting the groceries on the counter. The room felt smaller than he remembered, but warmer somehow. Celeste perched on the couch, half asleep but refusing to leave. Sabrina folded her arms, still uncertain. "You shouldn't be here." "I know," he said softly. "But I didn't know how else to say I'm sorry. And not the kind of sorry that fixes things. The kind that just means I finally understand." She didn't respond, but her shoulders loosened slightly. He glanced at Celeste. "I missed you, kiddo." Celeste yawned. "You can stay for popcorn," she said. Desmond smiled faintly. "I'd like that." Sabrina turned toward the kitchen, pretending to focus on the grocery bags, but her hands shook as she opened them. Ramen noodles, a chocolate bar, popcorn. Simple things. Nothing showy. Nothing she could accuse him of buying to impress her. When she looked back, he was standing there quietly, watching her. There was no armor left in his face. The silence that had filled 3 days began to shift. Not gone, not fixed, just softer, like something finally giving way. She took a slow breath. "You really bought ramen?" He nodded once. Her lips curved, small but real. "Chocolate too." He nodded again. She sighed, a sound that was half a laugh. "Then I guess you can stay for dinner." Celeste clapped her hands sleepily. "See, Mommy? I told you he'd come back." For the first time in days, Sabrina didn't correct her. Desmond smiled, the ache in his chest finally easing. "You were right, Celeste. I always come back when the food's this good." Sabrina rolled her eyes but couldn't hide her grin. "Don't make promises you can't keep." He looked at her then, really looked, and said quietly, "I plan to keep this one." The clock ticked softly in the background. The apartment smelled of rain and cheap noodles. It wasn't grand or glamorous, but it felt like something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. And in that fragile quiet, the distance between them finally began to close. Sabrina opened the door slowly, still unsure if she was ready for whatever came next. Desmond stood there in jeans and a gray sweatshirt, rain clinging to his sleeves. No chauffeur waited behind him. No polished confidence followed him in. Just a man holding 2 grocery bags and a look that said he hadn't slept in days. "I didn't bring flowers," he said quietly, his voice almost drowned by the rain outside. "I brought dinner. Ramen, popcorn, and chocolate. Celeste's favorites." Sabrina's first instinct was to close the door again. Part of her still hurt too deeply to trust the gesture. But there was something raw in his eyes, something real that had nothing to do with money or guilt. He looked smaller somehow, not in stature but in certainty. "Why are you here?" she asked. Her voice was calm, but every word trembled. Desmond exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding that breath for days. "Because being without you feels wrong." She didn't move. He shifted slightly, the grocery bag rustling in his hand. "I'm not here as a CEO. I'm not here to fix what people say or make a statement. I'm just here to be where I should have stayed the first time." Before Sabrina could answer, a small voice came from behind her. "Mommy!" Celeste appeared in the hallway, hair messy, teddy bear in one arm. When she saw Desmond, her sleepy eyes widened. She ran straight to him. "You came back." Desmond knelt down instinctively, catching her as she wrapped her arms around his neck. "Hey, sunshine," he whispered. "I missed you." She pulled back, her small hands digging into her pocket. "I have something for you." She handed him a folded napkin, the corners smudged with crayon. "I found it in Mommy's bag." He unfolded it carefully. It was the same drawing from their first dinner, 3 stick figures holding hands beneath a crooked heart. He stared at it, throat tightening. "You kept this." Celeste nodded proudly. "It's us." Desmond looked up at Sabrina, eyes glassy. "Can I stay for dinner?" For a second, she just stood there, silent. Then she stepped aside, her voice soft. "You can stay." Inside, Desmond set the groceries on the counter like they were the most important things he'd ever carried. Celeste climbed onto a stool, kicking her feet while Sabrina filled the kettle. The sound of boiling water filled the room. Ordinary, steady, alive. They didn't talk much at first. Desmond helped open the ramen packets while Celeste arranged the bowls. The smell of noodles and buttered popcorn filled the air, mixing with the sound of quiet laughter that began to return, piece by piece. Sabrina caught Desmond watching her as she stirred the pot. "What?" she asked, trying not to smile. He shook his head. "Nothing. Just, this feels like the first real thing I've had in a long time." She looked at him for a long moment, the man who once measured every second, now standing barefoot in her kitchen, boiling noodles. Maybe this was what real looked like after all. When the food was ready, they sat at the small dining table. Celeste slurped her noodles, giggling every time Desmond tried to do the same and failed miserably. The sound of her laughter filled every empty space that had existed between them. As the night went on, the tension slowly melted. Celeste fell asleep on the couch halfway through a cartoon, teddy bear tucked under her chin. Sabrina gathered the dishes quietly. Desmond stood, unsure if he should help or leave. "You don't owe us anything," she said suddenly, without turning around. Desmond froze. "You're wrong," he said softly. "I owe you everything." She glanced over her shoulder, confused. He stepped closer, his voice low but sure. "You reminded me what being human feels like. You and Celeste. You gave me something I didn't know I needed." Her eyes softened, but she said nothing. He continued, "I was so focused on control that I forgot how to live. You too, you live. You love. You fall and still get up. I want to learn how to do that." Sabrina set the last bowl in the sink, her shoulders shaking slightly. "I was scared, you know," she said after a moment. "Not because of who you are, but because I didn't think I belonged anywhere near you." Desmond's voice cracked a little. "And I was scared because I didn't know how to let you close." They stood there, facing each other in the dim light. No grand speeches, no promises, just the quiet truth between them. Sabrina sighed, brushing a tear away. "You still don't know what you're signing up for. My life is small. It's messy." He smiled faintly. "That's exactly why I'm here. I've had perfect. It's overrated." She laughed softly, the kind of laugh that sounded like forgiveness trying to find its way back. They moved to the couch, sitting beside Celeste, who had curled up halfway between them. The cartoon credits rolled on the TV. Desmond looked at the sleeping child, then at Sabrina. "Can I stay a little longer?" he asked quietly. Sabrina looked down at Celeste's hand resting over both of theirs. "You already are," she said. The air in the room felt lighter, fuller, not because everything was fixed, but because, for the first time, they weren't running from what was broken. And that was enough for tonight. The sound of quiet laughter filled Sabrina's small apartment. The TV flickered softly, throwing flashes of color across the room as Celeste tried to balance a noodle on her fork. "You're doing it wrong, Mr. Des," she said between giggles. Desmond leaned over the table, pretending to squint at his bowl. "I think the noodles are running from me," he said with mock seriousness, making Celeste laugh so hard she nearly spilled her drink. Sabrina, watching from the stove, couldn't help but smile. The heaviness that had hung over her all week seemed to ease, replaced by something light and unexpected. The man who once sat in a rooftop restaurant checking his watch now sat cross-legged on her couch, eating microwaved ramen and mimicking cartoon voices for a 7-year-old. When the dishes were cleared and the TV dimmed to its nighttime glow, Celeste yawned mid-sentence. "Can we finish the movie tomorrow?" she mumbled, already half asleep. Sabrina brushed her curls gently. "Yes, baby. Say good night." Celeste turned to Desmond and whispered, "You can stay if you want." Then she hugged him once and shuffled toward her room, teddy bear dragging behind her. The silence that followed wasn't heavy anymore, just quiet, real. Sabrina sat back down, arms folded, unsure what to say. Desmond stayed where he was, elbows resting on his knees, head lowered slightly. After a long pause, she finally spoke. "You don't owe us anything." Her tone was soft, but her eyes were steady. Desmond looked up, meeting her gaze. "You're wrong," he said. "I owe you everything." She blinked, caught off guard. "For what?" "For reminding me what being human feels like," he said simply. "For giving me something real when everything else in my life was managed." Sabrina didn't answer right away. She stared at her hands, tracing a line on her palm as if searching for the right words. "You make it sound easy," she said. "But it's not. I was terrified half the time. Not of you, just of where I fit." Desmond frowned slightly. "You fit right where you are." She shook her head. "That's the thing, Desmond. You have your world, suits, deals, headlines. I have mine, bills, parent-teacher meetings, paint on the floor. They don't mix." He nodded slowly. "I used to think the same thing. That love had to fit neatly somewhere, between meetings or inside perfect timing. But then you came along, and suddenly, nothing fit anymore. And I realized, maybe that's the point." Her lips curved faintly. "You sound like someone who's been thinking about this for a while." "I haven't stopped," he admitted. "The first night I met you, I went home angry at myself. Not because you were late, because you made me feel something I couldn't control. And I've spent my whole life controlling everything." Sabrina leaned back against the armrest, her eyes softening. "So that's what this is for you? Losing control?" He smiled faintly. "Maybe. But for once, it doesn't scare me." She looked at him for a long moment, really looked, and saw the man beneath the perfection. The exhaustion. The quiet sincerity that didn't need to impress her. "I was scared too," she admitted. "Scared you'd wake up one morning and realize we don't belong in the same picture. That Celeste and I were just temporary." Desmond leaned forward, voice low. "Do you think I came back tonight because of guilt? Because of pity?" "No," she said quietly. "But I think you came back because you weren't finished." He smiled, just a hint of it. "Then maybe that's what this is. Unfinished people trying again." Sabrina laughed softly. "You and your metaphors." He laughed too. "Hey, I'm trying. I'm out of my comfort zone here." Her laughter faded, replaced by something gentler. You really are, aren't you? He nodded. Completely. The clock ticked somewhere in the background. Neither spoke for a while. Finally, Sabrina reached out and brushed her fingers against his hand. Tentative, cautious, but certain enough to bridge the distance between them. You know, this might not work, she said quietly. He turned his hand over, lacing his fingers through hers. I know, but I'd rather try and fail than go back to not knowing you. She smiled, not wide, not dramatic, but full of quiet acceptance. You really mean that? He nodded. Every word. The wall between them, the one built from pride, fear, and headlines, finally began to crumble. Not with grand gestures, but with two people deciding to stay in the same room after the pain instead of walking away. Sabrina leaned her head against his shoulder. You still have a long way to go, she said softly. I know, he whispered. But if you'll let me, I'd like to walk it with you. Her eyes closed, the rhythm of his breathing steady against hers. For the first time, the silence between them didn't mean distance. It meant peace. Outside, the rain that had followed him all week had stopped. The city lights shimmered on the wet pavement, as if reflecting something new, something earned. In that small, ordinary apartment, surrounded by half-empty bowls and forgotten popcorn, two people who had nothing in common found something rare. Not perfection, not promises, just a beginning that felt worth the risk. The park was quiet that morning, soft sunlight breaking through a thin veil of clouds. It had rained the night before, leaving the grass bright and the air cool. Sabrina walked slowly beside Desmond, her hand brushing against his from time to time. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. Every silence between them now felt full, not empty. Celeste skipped ahead, a bundle of energy and joy, holding a box of chalk almost too big for her hands. She stopped every few steps to draw on the pavement. A sun, a flower, a messy rainbow. You're walking too slow, she called out, her voice carrying over the open park. Desmond smiled. We're old, remember? You're old, Sabrina teased. I'm just responsible. He laughed, shaking his head. You keep telling yourself that. Celeste turned back, grinning. You both talk too much. They reached the open square at the center of the park, the same spot where Desmond had once walked past families without really seeing them. Now, he couldn't take his eyes off the sight of Celeste kneeling on the ground, her little fingers smudged with blue and yellow dust. Sabrina sat on a nearby bench, watching as Celeste drew with fierce concentration. She could do this for hours, she said. I could watch for hours, Desmond replied. There was something grounding about the moment. No boardrooms, no schedules, no headlines. Just the soft sound of chalk scraping against stone and the laughter of a child who didn't care who anyone was supposed to be. After a few minutes, Celeste stood up, hands on her hips, inspecting her work. Okay, she said proudly. Now you can come see. Sabrina and Desmond walked over. On the pavement lay 3 stick figures, one tall, one medium, one small. Above them, in uneven pink letters, Celeste had written my family. The heart she drew above them was crooked but bright, the chalk so thick it almost glowed. Desmond froze. For a moment, everything around him, the chatter of other families, the sound of a bicycle bell, faded away. All he could see were those 3 simple shapes and the word above them. Family. He knelt down slowly beside Celeste, tracing one small chalk outline with his fingers. That's me, he asked quietly. Celeste nodded proudly. You're the tall one. Mommy's the medium one. I'm the boss. Sabrina laughed softly, but her voice caught in her throat. Desmond looked up at her then. Really looked. She stood a few feet away, sunlight touching her hair, her face a mix of surprise and something deeper. For the first time, he felt the last of his old armor fall away. All the walls he'd built around himself, all the rules he thought kept him safe, didn't matter anymore. The only thing that mattered was right there in front of him. A little girl with chalk on her hands, and a woman whose quiet strength had changed him without trying. He swallowed hard, his voice unsteady. "Sabrina," he said. She looked at him, eyebrows lifting slightly. "Can I stay?" he asked softly. "For every canceled moment of your life?" The words came out simple, but they carried everything he couldn't say. "I love you. I need you. I'm done running." Sabrina froze, her hand trembling slightly at her side. Tears welled before she could stop them. She knelt beside him, close enough to see the sincerity in his eyes. Her hand rose to his cheek, thumb brushing against his stubble. "You already stayed," she whispered. He let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Celeste clapped her hands suddenly, startling them both. "Does this mean we're a family now?" Desmond laughed through tears. "If your mom says yes." Sabrina wiped her cheeks, smiling through the blur. "Yes, Celeste. We are." Celeste grinned and went right back to drawing, adding a house beside the figures. "Then can we have pancakes every Saturday now?" she asked seriously. Desmond chuckled. "Deal." He looked at Sabrina again. She was still crying, but her smile was brighter than he'd ever seen. She leaned in, resting her forehead lightly against his. For a long time, they stayed there, quiet, while Celeste's laughter echoed across the open park. The breeze picked up, scattering a little cloud of chalk dust that swirled around them like soft confetti. Desmond closed his eyes, feeling the warmth of the sun on his face, the sound of Sabrina's steady breath beside him, and the distant hum of the world continuing as if it had been waiting for this moment all along. He wasn't thinking about the company, or the press, or what tomorrow might bring. He was thinking about pancakes, small hands covered in color, and a life that finally made sense because it wasn't planned. When he opened his eyes again, Sabrina was still looking at him. "You okay?" she asked gently. He smiled. "More than okay." Celeste waved at them from the sidewalk. "Come see the house. I made a window for everyone." Sabrina laughed, standing and pulling him to his feet. "Come on, Mr. Des. The boss is calling." He followed her, heart full, steps light. For once, he didn't feel like he was chasing success. He was walking toward something that actually felt like home. Weeks turned into months, and slowly the noise faded. The articles stopped trending. The headlines were replaced by newer scandals, different names. For the first time, Desmond, Sabrina, and Celeste could just exist. Not as a story, but as people. Life didn't become perfect. It became real. Desmond still ran his company, still attended meetings and made impossible decisions. But every Friday, at exactly 4 o'clock, his office light went off. His staff learned not to question it. He'd leave his tie draped over the chair, roll up his sleeves, and drive across the city to a small apartment that always smelled like paint and vanilla. Sabrina had started painting again. Not for money, not for validation, but for herself. Her art now hung in a small community gallery downtown. Bright colors, bold strokes, stories told in shapes and light. One of her pieces was titled "Three Figures and a Sky." It was a tribute, not to wealth or romance, but to the strange, gentle family that had formed from a canceled dinner and a child's courage to speak up. Celeste, now more confident than ever, ruled her small world with charm and laughter. She called Desmond Mr. Des for a long time, until one day she just called him Dad. It slipped out during breakfast, said casually between bites of toast. Desmond had frozen, spoon in hand, unsure whether to correct her or cry. Sabrina only smiled and whispered, "Don't say anything." They built routines, not rules. Pancakes on Saturdays, park walks on Sundays, quiet evenings with movies they never finished because Celeste fell asleep halfway through. No grand gestures, no perfect photos, just the rhythm of three hearts learning to beat in the same space. Desmond's house remained, but it was no longer his home. He spent more time in Sabrina's apartment than in his own mansion. The walls there carried laughter instead of echoes, warmth instead of silence. Sometimes, late at night, Sabrina would find him sitting on the couch, a cup of tea in his hand, just watching Celeste's drawings on the fridge. "You're staring," she'd tease. "I'm learning," he'd say. "Learning what?" "How to stay." And he did. Their differences didn't disappear. They became the balance. Her chaos softened his order. His structure steadied her storms. Together, they created something neither of them had expected: peace without perfection. One evening, months later, the three of them sat at the same kind of table where it all began. Not at La Mariposa with chandeliers and city views, but at home, surrounded by mismatched plates and the smell of buttered noodles. Celeste was telling a story about her art class, Sabrina was laughing, and Desmond was listening. Really listening, his elbows on the table, his phone forgotten on the counter. The clock ticked quietly. The world outside moved fast, as it always had. But here, time slowed down. Sabrina glanced at him and smiled. "You're quiet tonight." He shrugged lightly, just taking it in. Celeste threw a noodle across the table. "You're supposed to talk too." Desmond grinned, flicking one back. "Fine. I'll talk. Only if it's about dessert." Sabrina laughed. "You're hopeless. Hopelessly happy," he said. And for once, that was true. The scene mirrored that night months ago. A dinner table, a waiting man, a woman and her daughter. Except this time, no one was late. No one was leaving. Celeste leaned her head on his arm, eyes half closed. "You're not going anywhere, right?" He looked at her, then at Sabrina, who met his gaze with quiet certainty. "Nowhere," he said softly. "Not anymore." Outside, the evening light faded, and the city glowed. Inside, laughter filled the space that once held silence. Because sometimes love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone who shows up, even after everything is canceled. Tell us where you're watching from, subscribe for more powerful stories, and stay tuned because tomorrow we'll drop another story you won't want to miss. Your support helps us keep bringing you these stories.